could ever care for me, Rosanna.
I came to California, and I was a new kid on the block in the studio. And
Did you have a family by then?
yeah, I had a family.
Okay.
I had 3 kids by the time I was 26 years old.
Oh, you were busy.
Yeah. So anyway, I came out here, and you know, the other engineers were kind of New York guy, and you know, they weren't very helpful in any way. But a couple of people liked me, and I was starting to do dates, and I was using different microphone techniques than they used in California. And I was getting great bass sounds, you know, and the guys were hearing it and saying, "Oh, this is pretty good." So I started doing more and more. And there was a guy by the name of Bones Howe, who was an engineer, and he was a very nice guy. But he started doing an album, and he got in an argument with the producer. His name was Cy Rady. And so they asked me to go on and finish the album. And I finished the album, and it was the Peter Gunn album with Henry Mancini.
For me. You know what? Every band I was in, every junior high school talent show, we played that damn song.
That was all done mono 2-track, all done, no mixing. That was it. You know, what came out of the speakers, what went on tape, and that was it. But because of that, I started doing all the RCA work. I became their favorite boy, and I was doing Jesse Belvin and, you know, just everybody they had on a label. Anyway, RCA was building a studio, 2 rooms actually, at the old NBC building. And just before it was finished, they came to me and offered me a job there. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I didn't want to leave where I was because I was very happy and comfortable, and the room was great, and I was going to somewhere where I wasn't sure about the room. Well, unfortunately for me, it was the best room I've ever worked in. And I was getting to do, I did a thing with Elvis Presley and the GI Blues after he got out of the service, and Dwayne Eddy, and Ike and Tina Turner, Sam Cooke, Henry Mancini. I mean, it just went on. And the great thing about the job was I could do a rock and roll date in the afternoon, a classical date in the morning, and then maybe Sam Cooke at night, or a big band thing, a Harry James band. I mean, I got to do all types of music and got to love it all. Even if it was music, I didn't like the music. I loved the sounds. And I would focus on that, and it was the focus of just capturing the sounds. And I would learn to go in the room, listen to what they were doing, come in the control room and try to replicate that. And then, you know, just move mics around a little bit. Mancini was great. When I did Hatari, the same album that's in, there's a cut called Sounds of Hatari. And Hank went to Africa when they were shooting. And when he came back, he brought all these instruments. So we had dried beans that were like this tall, and they would just, and you could hear this great sound, and there were a couple of those, and a log bass that Shelly Manne played, and a calliope that, you know, all these were foreign instruments, you know, things you don't see every day in the studio. And on top of that, we'd have 3, 4 percussionists going, and strings, and French horns, and trombones, and trumpets, and 4 bass flutes. And trying to keep the bass flutes up on top of all of that was that was a great lesson to learn.
How'd you do it?
Well, what I did was I used two M49 microphones, old Neumann microphones. Anyway, I put them in the figure 8 position, and I sat them, the brass was blowing this way out, and I sat them right in front of the brass, but with the dead side of the mic to the brass, and I had them on either side, and they were they were this far from the mic, right on top blowing. That's how we got that sound.
Can you go into a little bit when you started your relationship with Jefferson Airplane?
What happened was I was an engineer at RCA, and producers would come in all the time and ask for me to work on the dates, and I would work on the dates, and the producer would be on the phone calling a bookie or trying to get a hooker or something. And I was doing all the work, and I was producing, and there'd be times, where stuff would go by, and they wouldn't. I'd tell the guys, "Hey guys, we're on the honor system. If you make a mistake, raise your hand, because this guy isn't going to hear it." So I finally decided that, hell, I want to be a producer. That's where the money is, and that's where the glory is. And I had one producer I used to mix all the time. He'd come in with a massage table and get on it, and a guy would come, and I'd be working my ass off trying to get this done. He'd be laying there getting rubbed down. So anyway, I went to my boss at that time, and my boss was a guy, a wonderful human being. He's not around anymore. His name was Steve Scholes. And he was the guy that signed RCA signed Elvis Presley to RCA. And he laid his job on the line for it. They gave him $35,000 to sign, and he said, "Oh, this guy's going to happen." And of course, he was already happening with Sun, and then when he hit RCA, it just exploded. Anyway, I told him that I wanted to be a producer, and I had gotten an offer from another studio. They wanted me to come over there and be an engineer over there for a lot more money than I was making, and because they wanted me to do all the Frank Sinatra dates and things. And so I said to him, you either make me a producer here, or I'm going to leave anyway. So he said, okay. So he made me producer, and my salary was cut in half, just about.
Oh,
and then I started. They gave me a roster of people that were my artists that I had to work with, and it was like 11 or 12 artists. And in those days, we always did 2 albums a year with each artist, so it was a lot of work. And I was doing the Limelighters and Dwayne Eddy. Finally, Eddie Fisher.
Would you tell me the story about Eddie Fisher?
Well,
about what happens in the studio? His timing.
Oh, I'll tell you that. Anyway, so I was doing Eddie Fisher in the afternoon, and then 8 o'clock at night, I would do Jefferson Airplane. It would go to 3, 4, and 5 in the morning. I'd go home, get up, and go to the office and do my paperwork. I had to do budgets and get all the publishing stuff straightened out, and back in with Eddie Fisher at 2 o'clock. And I had been working with Eddie for a while. So I finally called my boss at that time, another guy, on the phone, and I said, "Listen, you got to get somebody to do Eddie Fisher. I can't do this anymore. It's just like I don't see my family, I'm not getting any rest." And he said, "Well, why not truck drivers do it?" And I kind of scratched my head, couldn't figure out what the hell he meant by that. But I said to him, "Do me a favor, get yourself a couple of truck drivers." I quit, and I left. So then I became an independent producer. Jefferson Airplane called me and asked me if I would independently produce their records. So I was doing 12 artists at RCA producing in a year, and I was making in those days about, with my bonus, about $35,000. I did one album with the Jefferson Airplane, and my first royalty check was $50,000. So I knew I made the right choice. But getting back to Eddie Fisher was a huge artist at the time, big hits. But And I had heard his records before I got involved with him. But once I got involved with him, I realized he had no sense of time and no sense of pitch. And he had a piano player by the name of Eddie Samuels. So when we did dates, and it was always dates, big orchestra dates, it was always live. And Don Costa was doing the arrangements, very famous arranger. But I would hire Eddie Samuels, and I had to pay him double. And he would stand in front of Eddie and count, and then point to Eddie when Eddie had to come in and sing. That's a true story. So Don Costa runs down the orchestra, and listen, everything's good, okay, everything's fine. He comes into me and he said, "Al, I'm going to go outside. I got a terrible headache. The concertmaster will conduct." And I said, "Okay." He goes, lays down. We do it, and everything's fine. A couple of weeks later, we're doing another session. Same thing. He said, "Oh, I got a headache." I said, "Okay." He goes outside, the concertmaster goes. The third time he did it, I finally went out and I said, "Oh, Don, what's going on?" Yeah, he said, "I can't stand the way that motherfucker sings."